Part 2 Ending of the Grind, Part 1 down below. When Short Moves arrived at the apartment complex, Foster oversaw the loading of George's belongings, and the application was accepted. First National Bank also rubber-stamped George's home loan. At the new house, Denise oversaw the unloading of George's boxes and furniture. Professionally, the three burly men knew enough to nod respectfully at anything the short woman said. The foreman remarked, "Thank you, ma'am," as Denise gave each man a crumpled 20 and an even more crumpled 5. "Dude, whoever she married, you better believe it." They rushed to their next programmed move, and they toe that line, one of the soldiers stated. Samantha arrived and brought William and Cynthia to George's new home. George was kind to Samantha as well as William, although in all honesty, he didn't want the haughty, smug man living in his home. However, George was old enough to understand that being obnoxious or unwelcoming would not achieve anything. Samantha remarked, "Wow, you could just about walk here." George replied, "Yeah, you'll probably see us out and about, walking," and he held up his new stroller to Samantha. "That's right, not a pool." William scoffed as he peered through the atrium doors into the backyard. "William," Samantha purred. "What? God forbid. Can't say anything stupid without you getting really angry." William quarreled. "Hey, whose Benz that is?" Charlene entered the house and inquired. William grinned, his eyes finding Charlene's striking chest rather than her attractive face. "Mine," he said. Charlene was 14 inches taller than William, so he had to look very low to see her chest extending past the neckline of her top. The girl looked annoyed, but William did not see it. She fought the need to cross her arm across her chest. "George, what about you? This is the..." With a raised eyebrow, Samantha made a demand while her lover peered through the stranger's top. "Samantha, this is Charlene Chalmers," George introduced himself. "She's my girlfriend." George was baffled as to why he found it difficult to acknowledge that the stunning girl was his girlfriend. George assumed that a portion of his reluctance stemmed from his inability to accept Samantha as his ex-wife rather than his wife. "Charlene, this is Samantha," stated George. "She's Cynthia's mommy." "That's right," Charlene replied as she moved to stand beside George. "So nice to meet you." George could tell Charlene was trying to explain, or at least clarify, the slight pause in his voice when he introduced her as his girlfriend by the way she gripped his hand. Samantha said, giving William a fierce look as he kept gazing at Charlene's chest. George had placed a new low dresser and changing table in Cynthia's nursery. Samantha wasn't shocked to notice that Cynthia's crib and the changing table matched. That there was a cute tiny lamp with a charming little ballerina rising up and holding the lampshade high did not surprise her. That was part of the thing about Samantha's husband, her former husband, that had irked her so much. Everything was in its proper place, tidy, and order. Their funds were similarly well kept, structured, and in order. They could have traveled to Hawaii if they had the money. George insisted they hold off. Samantha said, "And we had a lot more money to do a lot more stuff," pointing to the toy box in the closet that contained numerous brand new toys just waiting for Cynthia to pick them up. Samantha instantly exclaimed, "Let's go," and grabbed William's hand. Samantha nearly grinned, seeing the look on Charlene's face. George was about to receive a tongue lashing for an alleged affront. Samantha's palm grip on William's hand revealed her intention, even with his self-absorbed nature. He was going to receive another lecture about some perceived transgression. Taking another glance at the midget's amazing chest, he asked Samantha whether she had considered getting implants. George received a tongue lashing. Charlene questioned him, in a sobbing voice, if he felt embarrassed or ashamed of her in any way. Or was he still infatuated with his ex-wife? Did he still have a passion for the stunning redhead? Was that it? George took Charlene in his powerful arms and gave her a hug and kiss. In a low, soft voice, he described the mental block he had encountered having both his love and his ex-wife in the same room. Melting in his arms, Charlene said, "I'm your love." William was in Samantha's living room, stretched out on her plush couch, waiting breathlessly for Samantha's next tongue lashing, while George and Charlene were making out on his couch. He wondered idly if the engagement ring would make her stop talking. He had considered proposing to Samantha while they were walking on a glacier on an Alaskan cruise, sans the whiny baby. Jesus, how frequently do babies cry? Do they ever stop filling diapers with crap? But now George has to monitor the brat because of that loser. Saying, "I'm going out," Samantha hurried from the living room to the garage. "I have no idea when I'll return." "Hey, you're having dinner by yourself." "Oh, all right," William murmured, standing up. "Love you." Samantha did not return William's affection. William was unaware of this. He went over to the bar in the corner and poured a couple fingers of George's St. Elizabeth premium whiskey for himself. William dipped a couple more fingers into the glass to test the weight of the bottle. Samantha texted her cousin Polly, "Need to see you," while William drove the 3 blocks to their house from George's new residence. Samantha was not pleased with Polly's remark. She and her spouse were at the Casual, a little dive that the two ladies had determined was their spot. Samantha would have much rather been in Polly's gorgeous, cozy house, or the complete seclusion of Polly's office. Whitney wasn't present. Samantha had nothing against the stunning blonde. "Hey, Terry, they'll get shots of that oak leaf, and I'll go on another diet, okay?" Polly excitedly cried out as Samantha walked inside the small, quiet bar. "Yay, With a happy giggle, Whitney leaned in close to Polly. "Joe Bob, Carla's on her way, here." Terry, an elderly gentleman, informed a very drunk patron. What a waste, awesome. This is how she perceives me." Joe Bob leaned his head against the bar with a slur. When Terry placed a shot glass of amber liquid in front of Samantha, Whitney instructed her to sip it slowly. Son of a ... this is excellent." Samantha gushed as she sipped the silky whiskey. "All right, what's going on?" Polly inquired as she led Whitney and Samantha to a booth in the corner. Samantha took a taste of the whiskey, shook her head, started, stopped, paused, and started again. When Polly saw Whitney was going to help Samantha, she gently placed her hand on her thigh. Their talk was interrupted when a stunning but gaunt-looking dishwater blonde arrived. The woman's desperate tone came through in her voice, even though they couldn't understand what she was saying to the inebriated man. Yeah, let's go. God damn it," Joe Bob growled and staggered from his stool. Samantha took another breath, turned to face the wall with the black panels, and began to speak. She discreetly confided in the two women that she had felt imprisoned and choked by her marriage to George Luquette. She desired both to live and to enjoy herself. However, George was incapable of being impulsive or enjoyable. Samantha stammered. "He even makes the bed before he leaves the room. Swears he can't leave the bedroom until..." Polly gave Whitney a friendly swat as Whitney chuckled. Samantha was too busy moaning about George's meticulous preparation, planning, and plotting to notice the tender conversation between the two women. Subsequently, she discussed her encounter with William on Margarita Friday. Samantha, a pretty redhead with what many said was an excellent bubble back, was used to getting solicited by both male and occasionally female customers. When Samantha showed them her gorgeous engagement ring and matching wedding band, the majority of them were put off. Samantha mutely remarked, "George saved up every penny he could," as she pointed to her bare finger. "He even did some house painting on the weeks he was in." Whitney couldn't contain the approving sigh that came out of her mouth. Samantha said gently, "Yeah," and reached for her empty glass to take another sip of the superb whiskey. Samantha had told George on Friday morning that she had noticed a brand new Lexus on the road. She had just mentioned that she had seen one and thought it was really nice, not that she wanted one. George instantly objected to the thought of her purchasing a brand new vehicle of any make or model. At this point, Samantha imitated George's deep voice, saying, "Depreciation starts the minute those wheels touch the ground." Samantha had brought a bad attitude with her to work that day. Samantha had noted the fine suit, the big diamond ring, and the Rolex watch when the dapper and shrewd William Carter had taken a seat in her section. William had left his business card along with his signed receipt, which included a 100% gratuity. Samantha said, "It's not the first time someone's left their business card." However, Samantha didn't simply discard the card this time. William Carter, president of sales, was positioned in the center of the card, with Tri-Carter's emblem situated in the upper right-hand corner. William had scribbled his cell phone number on the back. The unlawful relationship had been adventurous, exhilarating, impromptu, and enjoyable at first. George then entered. Samantha thought, "I had to be the good, responsible wife for a whole week, doing good, responsible things, pinching every penny," until Lincoln let out a squeal. "And now?" After a lengthy silence, Polly asked, "And now?" While glancing at the tabletop, Samantha pondered. It's true that they didn't cut corners. Samantha may get Pillsbury cinnamon rolls rather than Burns and Burns Grocer's brand if she desired them. She might persuade him to prepare her beef stroganoff rather than the stew meat that George insisted on having. Rather than attending the dollar matinees, she and William went to the cinema at the regular hour when most people went. William purchased the enormous buttered popcorn with additional butter from the concession booth. They then went for a sundae at Yum Yum ice cream. George consistently offered either option. Afterward, they had two options, either have a big bowl of buttered popcorn and a drink, or visit the ice cream shop. Polly responded, "Okay, so George is a cheapskate." "He's not, at all, trust me. He isn't a cheapskate," Samantha defended George. He's just uber practical." William lacked common sense. William had always had a golden umbrella, so he had never considered saving for a rainy day. All the items in her shared house with William, including the furnishings, glasses, and plates, were bought by George. Samantha attempted, but was unable to identify even a single object in the home that William had helped with. "A soap," Samantha blurted out. "I get the Anna soap." Whitney said, "I really like the one with raw milk and honey. It smells," Polly jokingly said. Sam said, "I get the blackberry," without looking at him. "Another?" When Samantha picked up her empty glass again, Polly offered gently. Polly chuckled. "Yes, Whitney, you can have another one too," and Whitney leaped over to the bar. You're not drinking." Whitney placed 2 shot glasses on the table, and Samantha saw. Polly grinned and said, "Not good for the baby," as Whitney gave out another delighted whoop. Whitney reached for Polly's round belly, shocking Samantha. Holding Whitney's hand against their infant, Polly placed her palm over hers. Taking a sip of her whiskey, Samantha tried to put on a happy face for her cousin and her cousin's spouse. They were both obviously overjoyed to find out they were pregnant. As Whitney laughed and Polly smiled, Samantha added, "I hope it's a girl. She and Cynthia can play together." "So, Samantha, What are you thinking? After a few moments of stillness, Polly inquired. Samantha was thinking about the awkward, stiff Sunday dinner at Minnie Carter's house the Sunday before. The supper itself had been really tasty, cooked by Minnie's very smart English housemaid. Minnie had not even glanced at Cynthia. She had been courteous but distant from Samantha. Samantha had been acquainted with Natalie, William's sister, who had a boisterous 2-year-old daughter named Elizabeth Carter. William's younger brother Andrew had attended the dinner with his wife, their intelligent 5-year-old daughter Rihanna, and their 1-year-old son Andrew Jr. Cold, harsh eyes and a red head had been Andrew. Victoria, his wife, had tattoos and facial piercings that made her an odd sight. Samantha made the alleged faux pas of calling the strange-looking blonde Rhea, after Andrew had called her Rhea. What about Samantha? Sweetheart, we're not in love, Victoria angrily stated. So, don't call me Rhea, okay? I apologize. I'm sorry, Samantha said to herself. And with that, any meaningful dialogue had ended. When Samantha had complimented him on his meal, the old servant had nodded, stonily. When Samantha thanked Minnie for having her over for supper at her lovely house, Minnie only nodded and put on a false grin. Samantha had been dragged into the kitchen by George's mother from the time she arrived at Miss Barbara's house. Cindy naturally wanted to go along, and the 3 women had prepared the Sunday dinner together while George and his dad watched a pointless football game on TV. Cindy had commanded, "You go away," when George poked his head into the kitchen. "Just the ladies and me, not with boys." Yeah, Cindy had given Samantha a big smile when she laughed. That was how every Sunday was, Samantha recalled. The scents, the laughing, the warmth of the Luquette kitchen, and Cindy's never-ending need for approval from Samantha and Miss Barbara. Samantha was certain that the upcoming Sunday meal at Miss Carter's house would be equally awkward and stiff, and the next one would be awkward and stilted just like the first. Furthermore, Samantha's pain had gone unnoticed by William, who had been truly astonished when she expressed it. With her eyes lifted from the dark wood of the table, Samantha said to her cousin, "I think I have a serious case of buyer's remorse." Polly prompted, and nothing. Tossing down the last sip of her drink, Samantha muttered, "Absolutely goddamn nothing." Samantha went back home and reheated a lean cuisine dinner. When William asked George if he could watch Cynthia for 2 weeks while he took Samantha on a cruise, George addressed him. George had arranged with Bowman for his daughter, not for William or Samantha. When they got aboard the ship, Samantha was almost panicked. She had been only a few minutes away when George had given birth to their daughter. However, she would be several hundred miles away here on a cruise line. Samantha had no way of reaching Cynthia in the event that her infant needed her. "Oh my God, dude, heard that. Spread out on the bed in their cabin," William said. "Huh?" Samantha inquired while scanning her surroundings. "You're correct. No weeping, yelling brats," laughed William. Samantha's deepest hatred for William Carter was that very moment. She had a beautiful little girl who was not a brat. Her daughter was not a burden or an annoyance. William proposed while trekking over the ice, extending a ring containing a square-cut diamond weighing 4 carats. It had to be among the ugliest rings Samantha had ever seen. Samantha thought the ring was tacky and cheap, even though she was sure it was expensive. It was just flashy. "No," Samantha answered quietly but firmly. "What am I? How come? You have to be fooling me, you have to." William gasped in genuine shock. William sighed. There's no point in making a bad situation worse, and Samantha turned to rejoin the tour group. There was stony quiet on the return journey. Samantha enjoyed her return trip more because she was closer to her baby girl and William wasn't pressuring her to bond. As soon as the house door opened, William started packing his things. Taking hold of her own car's keys, Samantha set out to save her infant and bring her home. "Hey, she's just about down," said a sluggish-looking George as he opened his door to Samantha. Samantha stood there and watched as Charlene sang to Cynthia in a low voice. Samantha recalled hearing Cindy be serenaded by Miss Barbara with those tunes. As Samantha heard the well-known lullaby, tears welled up in her eyes. As Charlene carried the sleeping child out of the room, George said, "Yeah, Mommy, seems like we had a bad case of colic this week." "Colic? Oh no." Samantha let out a cry, overcome with intense remorse that she had failed to provide her child with assistance when he was in distress. "Hey, Samantha," said a weary Charlene as she walked into the kitchen. "So, what was the experience like?" "You know that I've never gone to Alaska," Samantha said. I hated it." "This is my last beer," Charlene said to George. "Are you? Even if I've already added another 6-pack to it, huh?" George queried. Samantha said with a gentle smile, "I see you still do just 1 6-pack at a time." "That's right. The pantry has a lot more space," George asserted. "Samantha, you want anything?" Charlene extended her hand and removed the cap from a barley turlings. "How cold is that beer?" Samantha asked. George responded, "Should be cold by now." "Okay, I'll be by tomorrow. When you going offshore?" Once Samantha had checked on Cynthia, she inquired. "Tuesday," said George. "Then it won't be 4 weeks before I'm back. I traded with Greg for this extra week." "And it is just like you to do that," Samantha thought to herself, feeling almost resentful of George's pragmatic outlook. "You are not allowed to use any of your vacation days. No, you have to make every effort to maximize your chances. Got him. Just got him." When Samantha came back, the house looked like a tornado had stormed through it, in typical William fashion. William didn't break anything, but he also didn't care to return anything to its rightful position. Clothes hangers were lying on the bed and the floor, and the dresser drawers were partially open. Samantha sighed and rearranged everything before using the vacuum to clean the entire house. She grinned. She was acting in the exact same way that George would have. Every time, Cynthia's child support payment arrived 3 days ahead of schedule. Samantha had received no spousal support because of her adultery. Furthermore, Samantha had not required any spousal support at that point. She could always rely on William and William's credit card. 2 months after William left, Samantha realized something was wrong. Her pitiful savings had vanished. She could either pay the electricity and buy food or pay the mortgage. However, she lacked the money to accomplish both. The majority of her child support payment was taken by Happyland Daycare Center, where she sent her daughter when she left for work during the 2 weeks that George wasn't there. "Daddy, I need help," Samantha murmured. "You require assistance. Do you require assistance? Insulin has tripled in just a month, and insurance companies are attempting to claim that the hurricane had nothing to do with the tree that fell on the property. If the hurricane wasn't the cause, then what was?" Her father growled into his cell phone. "Ain't like I pushed it on the house. Are you in need of assistance? Come along to the club." When Samantha carried their daughter inside, George grinned broadly. After a little while, Denise and Charlene arrived. When Samantha started crying uncontrollably, George was sent to the nursery to look after his daughter while his friend and girlfriend consoled his estranged wife. "Women, huh, Cynthia?" said George. "Ugh, hold on. Are you not one of them too?" "Yeah, man, I'm game." "All right, but you tell me that you will always love me, no matter what." Charlene responded, "I will," as she stood in the doorway. "George, you need come see." Samantha broke down in tears as she acknowledged that she was failing as a waiter. Her income was meager and she worked long hours. She was extremely dependent on tips, but they weren't really trustworthy. "So what you needing from me?" George queried. "Yes, ma'am, I continue to work. Hadn't been for the scholarship awarded by Nicole King, ma'am." "Dude, I'm not sure where I would be," Charlene said, speaking into her phone. Samantha said, George, I don't know," trying not to stare at her ex-husband's face. "Here, you need talk to this woman, here," Charlene said, shoving Samantha's phone into her hand. "Greetings. Who is this?" Charlene stated. Samantha. "Hi, this is Jeffries from Kampala. As of right now, I am the Nicole King Scholarship Chair. According to Ms. Chalmers, you're a fantastic fit for our support." A soothing voice said, "As you may or may not be aware, recommendations from past scholarship recipients are moved to the top of the list. How does 3 o'clock sound?" "Well, 3, when exactly? On what day?" Samantha asked. "Today is 3 o'clock, Ms. Luquette," Kampala chuckled. "Now, go home, get dressed in something nice." "No, I'm coming with you," Charlene replied. "Observe. God intended for me to have just half a day today." Charlene gave Samantha advice on what to say while Samantha washed her face and got dressed. In the end, Charlene decided that Samantha's makeup and dress were sufficient. "Hi, Mrs. Jakes, we here see Kampala." As Charlene and Samantha walked inside King Sanitation's lobby, Charlene muttered something to the receptionist. "You're Ms. Luquette," smiled Sheila Jakes. "I'll inform Mrs. Jeffries of your arrival." "Hello, Charlene, how are you doing?" Sheila said to Samantha. "She'll see you now," shortly after. "It's the," Charlene said. "I know exactly where it is. I'll take her," taking Samantha by the hand and dragging her down a hallway. Charlene. "Hello," a lovely African-American woman said with a smile as she stood up. "You pregnant?" Upon noticing the woman's little paunch, Charlene gasped. After an hour, George opened his eyes to see a happy Charlene walking into his house. He stood up and began putting their dinner together. "She's going go to the Votech. Get this, she's thinking might want to be an administrative assistant like me," Charlene said with a smile. "Do I have to worry? You and my ex-wife are hanging out." George made fun of it. "Hey, both of us are Cynthia's mothers," Charlene asserted. "Need get along for the baby." Samantha barged into the house and called out for Charlene, shocking George. George was left in the kitchen by Charlene. Excitedly, Samantha handed Charlene a brochure from the St. Elizabeth Parish Votech, indicating that one of the courses was called Child Care. Huddled together on George's couch, she and Charlene went over the other options. "You got enough, and I just barge into your house like that?" George grinned as Charlene inquired. "Yes," George replied, "I got enough." "I apologize," Samantha stated as they were eating. "I knew you would storm into my home, right? If that were the case, I would be furious with you. However, I was ecstatic to see Child Care and..." Calmly, "We got a doorbell," George announced. Samantha said, "And I'll use it next time." "How you always get this so perfect." "How about Charlene?" "The tubers. He incorporates cream," Samantha replied. George waved the 2 women back to their seats as Cynthia let out a cry. In an instant, he brought the baby into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator to get a bottle for her. With a sniffle, Samantha turned and ran from George's house. George took the sponge and wrung it out before setting it down on the little wire rack behind the sink. He heard the automobile pull away. Samantha. As Charlene moved the girl from her crib to the living area, George could hear her singing to Cynthia. Yes, I also apologize, George remarked. And, I ain't sorry. Charlene looked up from her spot on the couch when George entered the living room. The kind, content smile she flashed George smiled in response to George. He sat on the couch after locking the front entrance of his house. Well, laughing, Charlene let George effortlessly lift her and Cynthia onto his lap. George engaged Charlene in play. Oh no, George, what a dude. That's not proper, you know, Charlene remarked following his third instance of fingering her. The excited girl ran into the living room, and George laughed. He took hold of her and turned her over onto the couch. George and Hank got together at the dead end the following day over pork loaf and a choice of brown or red gravy. A really lovely strawberry blonde danced and bounded to a hip-hop song, and George and Hank agreed that the music industry had changed significantly after Chet Atkins passed away. And you know, girl wouldn't have a clue who Chet Atkins was. The girl wriggled out of her faux leopard print blouse, and Hank nodded with his head. Probably not, George said, speculating about Charlene's appearance in a miniskirt and leopard print top. Hank generously paid for lunch after he gave George the go-ahead to ask his infant daughter for her hand in marriage. When George grudgingly broke the news that Hank was a divorced man and could not get married in the Catholic Church, Hank shrugged. Shit, that's not important. Our faith is Lutheran. Elgin Larry, that's a Lutheran atonement, right? He'll wed all of you, Hank exclaimed with joy. Hank was on the phone with Debbie, breaking the good news, as the two men were leaving the bar. Debbie was advised by Hank and George to keep the good news to herself because Charlene was unaware of the ring that was in George's pocket. No, Samantha, I'm not sorry, George thought to himself as he pulled up to pick up Cynthia from his former residence. Samantha frowned and said, Hey, was 'bout call you, already dressed as a waiter from Casa Ol. Billy just called, Monique just up and quit and walked out. George said, okay, crinkling his nose at the mess of his former house. The place required a thorough vacuum and dusting. George noticed that Samantha had left her bacon and scrambled eggs in the same skillet, indicating that the kitchen counter had not been cleaned since breakfast that morning. Yes, I am aware, George. The location is in ruins, Samantha spit out while George led Cynthia to the door. However, you know what? This is not your home. Yes, I do. George, you no longer reside here. George grinned and strapped Cynthia into her car seat, saying, No, Samantha, I ain't sorry in the slightest. My comment was worried especially with the daughter that somehow Charlene would be fridged and Samantha would reconcile with the MC, but thankfully that did not happen. She might have had regrets but doesn't change what she did.